Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Boluji Odufote. Boluji is a Nigerian professional with a background in mathematical economics, guys, and master's in global thoughts from Columbia University. Our work has explored critical issues like private infrastructure development in Nigeria. As a business analyst, she specializes in developing strategic solutions, but her passion lies in Nigeria's development, which led to her to co-found Coffee & Co., a thriving Lagos coffee house, a hub for community connection and empowerment. Please, welcome Boluji.
Good evening, everyone. So, I'm just going to start off with a couple of orders from some of our regulars. So we have Kingsley. Kingsley comes in, and he always orders an Americano. He always gets an Americano in a takeout cup, even though he's dining in. He just likes the cup. That's Kingsley. Then we have Mr. Dabasaki, who comes in, and he comes in always requesting a peach tea, and he wants it in a teacup. We also have Chinedu, who comes in, and he also gets a tea, but a chai latte this time, and he also gets it with a donut. Then we also have Solomon. Solomon comes in, and he always requests a caramel latte macchiato, which is a very extremely sweet drink. And in a few hours, he then requests for an Americano. So sometimes you walk in, and you see maybe 2 or 3 of these regulars, and they're in a conversation. They could be talking about politics, they could be talking about crypto, sometimes talking about Nigeria. When you see them speaking, you tend to think that maybe they've known each other for a very long time. These people were strangers until Coffee & Co. They met at Coffee & Co. And now you can see them at Coffee & Co. exchanging ideas, collaborating. So, why am I telling you about these are regulars? And how does it relate to the bio that MJ kindly read out? About my interest in the built spaces and how it connects to economic development. So I can tell you a very direct lineage, like a direct linkage between Coffee & Co. and economic development. Some of them are very straightforward. So the first one, productivity. So let's talk about how we're in Nigeria, a developing country where the power is not as stable. So imagine yourself, you're in a corporate meeting, or perhaps you have a deadline, and in that meeting, you're discussing with people possibly abroad. You're sitting at home, and all of a sudden, the light cuts out. Perhaps you're writing that dissertation, or you're writing to meet a deadline, the lights cut out, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're trying to complete your deadline. Something that maybe should have taken you an hour is now taking you 3 hours, and you have a headache. And that's because something very particular about our developing countries, infrastructure that should be at the background, is now being pushed to the foreground. How does Coffee & Co. come into play? So people come in to work. They find a conducive environment that allows them for a couple of hours while they're there to just forget about some of Nigeria's problems. They can sit, they can work, know that light isn't a problem, know that they're in a conducive place where they can also get fed. So that's one of the more direct connections between us and economic development in Nigeria. Then the other one that's also very direct, which I'm very proud to say, is that Coffee & Co. uses Nigerian beans. We also roast and get from a roastery in Lagos. So that's something that we're very proud to say when customers come in as well, that we're feeding into the community, not just within the Coffee & Co. community, but the greater community of Nigeria at large. Then there's the more nuanced linkage, and that's community. Now, this now relates back to the stories I told of my regulars that come in and how they feel a bit of connection with themselves and also with the brand. So with Coffee & Co., we're more than just a coffee house. We're a third space. Now, I guess some people might ask, what is a third space? So before I even speak about what a third space is, let me just explain what a first and what a second space is. So a first space typically is your home. It's where you're born into, where you grow up in. That's the first space that you're comfortable in. Then the second space is school or work, depending on what phase of life you're in. That's the second space where you get to interact with the world at large, and also kind of, in a sense, becomes your own space as well. Then third spaces come in, so they are the middle ground of those two. Third spaces are where you meet, you greet, and you linger. There are places where your social life can be linked to. There are places where communities are formed, where you engage with other people. Third spaces are also known to improve quality of life. And if the quality of your life is better, you also tend to be more productive in the economy at large. So let's talk about Coffee & Co. and third spaces. How does Coffee & Co. make sure that we are a space that facilitates this kind of conversations? I mean, there's the first thing of what the space physically looks like. We're a small space, so you're kind of forced to kind of interact with the space and with other people. We're also very deliberate in how we've arranged certain things to kind of foster that conversation. We're a space that I'm proud to say that if you're sat there, you don't feel some type of way if somebody reaches out to say hello. There might be other spaces where you might feel a little bit uppity having to reach out or just engage someone. But with this space, it's kind of expected, even though sometimes it does bug me when I'm trying to work. But notwithstanding, the openness of the space kind of allows you to now engage and get to know someone. You can reach out because maybe you saw something they were doing and just engage them like, hey, I see that you're doing X, Y, Z, and a conversation and a friendship can form from there. So that's just me talking about how the space is set up. Then there's something that we're also very deliberate about in ensuring that our staff also know who we are and what we stand for. So a lot of the times when my staff come in for an interview, I tend to ask them first, what did you think while you were here? I like to give them a few, like maybe 20 minutes to just sit and observe. So I want to make sure that for someone who doesn't know who we are yet, that message is being passed across. So it excites me when they come and say, oh, I liked that it was very welcoming. Everybody was doing their thing, but you could see the way people are bantering with each other. It feels warm. And that's a key to me because it means that for someone who doesn't really know, from us telling them who we are trying to be, that we're already passing that message across. So even during trainings, I try to make sure that they remember what they said and make sure that they're also part of facilitating that for the next person. So that's something deliberate that we also do. Another thing that we do in terms of facilitating this community is storytelling. We try to host events that could get people to come together, so things like stories over coffee. So if someone comes up with a theme and we all come round and people share stories about their lives that relate to that particular theme. We like to be a space where you can sit, hear someone talk, and you can relate with that and say, yes, that's happened to me too. And if it hasn't happened to you, it could be something that, oh, I've never thought about it before like that, or I've never seen the world in that perspective before. So that kind of storytelling and engagement fosters community. I'm grateful for the community here because they've also supported the community that I'm trying to build with us hosting games nights. So that's also part of the events that we try to do to foster community with our guests as well. So I've spoken about the space, I've spoken about events that we're doing. So I've spoken about quite a number of things that we do to try and foster that community within Coffee & Co. I've spoken about our stories, and I now want to speak about collaboration. So we also try to create a place where people feel like there's a platform for them to come and exhibit their talents, etc. So I'm sure a number of us know about Love Notes with BF here. I'm sure we've all been to one of Love Notes with BF. You might be shocked to know that the first ever meeting about Love Notes with BF was on a table at Coffee & Co. We're very proud to say that the first event for Love Notes with BF started within our four walls. And that community has grown so much that it has expanded beyond our four walls. So Coffee & Co. wants to be a part of our guest stories. We want people that can walk in and say, okay, at some point in my life, Coffee & Co. was where I spent my time. Coffee & Co. was where I engaged with other people. Coffee & Co. was where I birthed that idea. That's a kind of experience that I've had elsewhere that I've tried to now bring in here as well. So we've had people that have come in studying for the accounting exam. So now when they're telling you about that accounting exam, they can always come and champion, actually, in that phase of my life, I spent time here studying. So I've spoken to you about how we can be a part of your story. I've spoken to you about our story. And I'll be excited to hear more about the stories of the individuals here. So I'd love to grab a coffee with any of you and have a chat with any of you, perhaps possibly at Coffee & Co.